Greetings from Brother Stephen. I'm a disciple and witness of Iēsous Christ. To all the inhabitants of the earth, I present to you as a witness this gospel of the kingdom. In this lesson today, titled Iēsous Delivered to Pilate, we're going to be going over Matthew chapter 27, verses 1 through 2. This testimony is recorded in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So we're going to be going over all of those gospels so we can see the full picture of what took place when Christ was before Pontius Pilate. Beginning with Matthew chapter 27, verse 1, it says, when the morning was come. Now, if you go back to the last lesson, in Luke chapter 22, verses 66 to 71, when Iēsous was before the Sanhedrin, it says, and as soon as it was day, the elders of the people and the chief priests and the scribes came together and led him unto their council. So they took Christ in the night, and this is the first day when he was before the Sanhedrin. So when he stood before Pontius Pilate, this is the second day after his betrayal and arrest. It says, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Iēsous to put him to death. And when he had bound him, now again, when they bound Christ to a gibbet, or what the scriptures call a tree. Now, what I have here is a few examples of a gibbet. And as you can see, this gibbet is even in the form of a cross. It is basically used to lynch people from. Basically, Christ was bound to the top post of a gibbet. Now, this is also a gibbet that a person gets hung from. Now, the modern day gibbet that we know about in the United States of America is actually what is called a tree. They use a natural tree as a gibbet to lynch black people from. And basically what Christ went through when he was crucified, this was a lynching, a crucifixion, hanging from a tree. And again, it said they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate the governor. Mark chapter 15, verses 1 through 5. This subsection of scripture in Mark is known as Iēsous delivered to Pilate. It says, and straightway in the morning the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and the scribes and the whole council, and bound Iēsous again to that gibbet, and carried him away, and delivered him to Pilate. In Luke chapter 23, verses 1 through 6, also known as Iēsous delivered to Pilate, it says, and the whole multitude of them arose and led him unto Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, we found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar. Now we know that is false. We have a study titled, one second, let me pull up the name of that study. We have a study titled Paying Taxes to Caesar. And in paying taxes to Caesar is when we go over Matthew chapter 22, verses 15 through 21. So when they were saying he was forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, this was actually an outright lie, because Christ never taught not to pay taxes to Caesar. Christ taught, give unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and the things to God that belong to God, saying that he himself is Christ a king. And then we get to John chapter 18, verses 28 to 40. This is John's testimony of Iēsous before Pilate. It says, then led they Iēsous from Caiaphas, so he went from Ananias to Caiaphas, unto the judgment hall, which is Pontius Pilate. And it was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Paschah. Pilate then went out unto them and said, what accusations bring you against this man? They answered and said unto him, if he were not a malefactor or a criminal, we would not have delivered him up unto you. Then said Pilate unto them, take you him and judge him according to your law. In other words, the Old Testament. The Ioudaios therefore said unto him, It is not lawful for us to put a man to death, that the saying of Iēsous might be fulfilled, which he spake, signifying what death he should die. Then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again, and called Iēsous, and said unto him, Are you the king of the Ioudaios? We have Matthew chapter 27, verses 11 through 14. The subsection of scripture in Matthew is also when Iēsous was before Pilate. And Iēsous stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Are you the king of the Ioudaios? And Iēsous said unto him, You say it. And Pilate asked him, Are you the king of the Ioudaios? And Iēsous answering said unto him, You say it. And Pilate asked him, saying, Are you the king of the Ioudaios? And he answered him and said, You said it. Verse 34 in John, Iēsous answered him, Say you this thing of yourselves, or did others tell you it, you of me? Pilate answered, Am I a Ioudaios? Thine own nation and the chief priests have delivered you unto me. What have you done? Iēsous answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight that I should not be delivered to the Ioudaios. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Pilate therefore said unto him, Are you a king then? Iēsous answered, You say that I am a king. To this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth hear my voice. Pilate saith unto him, What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Ioudaios, and said unto them, I find in him no fault at all. And when he was accused of the chief priests and the elders, he answered nothing. And the chief priests accused him of many things, but he answered nothing. Then said Pilate unto him, Hear you not many things they testify against you? And Pilate asked him again, saying, Answer you nothing? Behold, how many things they testify against you. But Iēsous yet answered nothing, so that Pilate marveled. And he answered him to never a word. In other words, he never spoke a word when the scribes and Pharisees and the council was call themselves testifying against him, insomuch that the governor marveled greatly. Then said Pilate to the chief priests and to the people, I find no fault in this man. And they were more fierce, saying, He stirred up the people, teaching throughout all Ioudaios, beginning from Galilee to this place. When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked whether the man were a Galilean. This takes us to Luke chapter 23, verses 7 through 12. This subsection of scripture is known as Iēsous before Herod. And as soon as he knew that he belonged unto Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who himself also was at Jerusalem at that time. And when Herod saw Iēsous, he was exceedingly glad, for he was desirous to see him of a long time, because he had heard many things of Iēsous, and he hoped to have seen some miracles done by him. Then he questioned with him in many words, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and the scribes stood and vehemently accused him. And vehemently just means like emotionally. And Herod, with his men of war, set him at nigh and mocked him, and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe, and sent him again to Pilate. And the same day Pilate and Herod was made friends together, for before they were at enmity between themselves. Now, the reason that Pilate and Herod was at enmity is because Pilate is a Roman, Herod is a Greek. It is Herod's desire to become king of Jerusalem. So the beef or the tension that is between Pilate is because Pilate is the governor over Jerusalem, and Herod seeks to be king over Jerusalem. But as you read, and the same day Pilate and Herod were made friends together, for before they were at enmity between themselves. And this concludes this gospel.